Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Chat and Chill the Exclusive. I am Mark Hub, the CEO for Next Showcase USA, and we are so glad to be back on our annual show that we bring to you guys every third Saturday of the month, right here on Next Showcase USA's media channels, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. We're glad you guys are here on today. We have a great show lined up for you guys on today. We're going to be talking about some serious issues that we happen that's going on in these day and times. We know this is Mental Health Month, and so we definitely want to touch upon that. I am not your host. I'll be bringing our host again real soon. Of course, the show is hosted by none other than Tyra Martin, who is the senior producer for WGN, segment producer, excuse me, for WGN News. So we're going to be bringing her in shortly. But again, thank you guys for tuning in on today for Chat and Chill the Exclusive, because we will have a wonderful time. So I'm not going to prolong the show any longer. I'm going to introduce to you guys and your host for today and every third Thursday, right, for the Chat and Chill the Exclusive. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Tyra Martin.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Mark, for holding space for me today. Let's cut to it. This is Mental Health Awareness Month, and coming out of the pandemic, everybody's starting to get back to life as usual. But some are struggling, and some are finding new struggles. Some are dealing with issues that they brought with them from before the pandemic. And it's a good time to press the restart button, right? So let's do that today. Let's talk about healthiness. Let's emotional, physical, spiritual, and get everybody on the right track so that we can enjoy a healthy summer in every way possible. I've got two guests joining us today. I'm going to ask us, Mark, to bring them in. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, these are two mental health professionals in our area working in the community and Chicago church community as well. I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves. Ashanti, tell us about yourself.
Oh yeah, how you doing, everybody? Glad to be here. My name is Ashanti Petaway. I am the founder of a Clearview. It's a nonprofit organization that I started just about a year ago, centered on building emotionally and mentally healthy, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally healthy people. So it's an honor to be here, especially this time of month, as we celebrate mental health, or should I say, bring light to it even more. And I'm excited to have a great conversation with you ladies.
Ms. Ballard, tell us about yourself. I don't want to mispronounce your name. People call me everything that begins with a T and an A, so I don't want to do it to you.
Not a problem. Good afternoon, Ms. Tyra. I am Francesca. You can call me Q. Mark calls me Q. So I am Francesca Ballard. I am the owner and CEO of Bright Path Support Services. We are actually located in Indiana, but we also service some individuals who live in Illinois. We are a agency that provides mental health counseling to men, women, and children. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you guys to bring awareness to mental health during this Mental Health Awareness Month.
So one of the things that we know, being hued as we are, is that therapy is not discussed in our community at large. Family issues are not discussed openly. You find out secrets at the funeral or the repast, or that's what a lot of things are dealt with. What is it about the culture of African Americans that has led us to that point of resistance?
What I think is because we were always raised to whatever happens at home, you should leave at home. You don't talk about what happens in your house to anybody because it's nobody's business, regardless of what it is, regardless of what you may be struggling with. That's a huge part of it. And it comes from just how our ancestors were raised. And now that more people are reaching out, a lot of celebrities now are being able to express of how they are dealing with mental health, is bringing more light to it and making people more comfortable with able to reach out and seek help in it.
Shanti, what do you think?
You know what? I think that, like Q said, there's a historical aspect to it. What I've actually over time found extremely shocking is that I'm learning that sometimes the stigma we have that Black people or African Americans are struggling with mental health and don't want to address things is not necessarily unique to us, and that there are a lot of people group that they just don't talk about it. So if you can go into some Latin American communities, you go into some white communities, you go into some Asian communities, they're still not actively going to seek mental health counseling or going to counseling because it's taboo, because you just deal with it. I think the slight difference is that some other demographics, not all, have access to it.
Right.
And so there's where you see a disparaging number, because it's like if you're in a different financial bracket, you have health insurance where you can get where your copay may be $25 for you to go for a session. Whereas if you're in an impoverished environment where you're low income and next thing you know, you don't have insurance, and then you're talking about it's $150 every time you're coming to see a counselor, you're like, well, I can't afford to go to counseling, because what you're saying is, in order to get my mental health, I basically have to not be able to pay rent and feed my kids. And so that lies a lot of the tension there. I think, however, there is a younger generation, particularly in all communities, and we'll say the African American community, because I know that's what we're focusing on now. And a lot of your question is that we're starting to push back and say, hey, we need this, because we're recognizing that there is absolutely nothing we can do without having this, because we're tired of the weight on our shoulders and saying, hey, we can't figure this out. Y'all didn't know what y'all were doing, and we need help. And so you're seeing a younger generation just saying, hey, we're going to do what we have to ask for help.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ashanti, as well. I think the lack of knowledge and knowing how to be able to find the help, because it's a lot of people who don't know where to find the resources, and they don't know how to look for the resources. So I think that that's an issue as well, of why individuals will not go and seek the help that they may need.
You know, one of the criticisms of the millennial, and I think it's Gen Z groups, is that they are seen, they're considered kind of flaky, or that they will throw something off if it doesn't fit with what their perceived expectation is. And I read an article recently that said it's not weakness, it's actually a new kind of determination that would benefit the older folks to say, this is not working for me.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Q.
No, go ahead.
You know, my mama raised me this way, so I'm going to defer to you, Q. So I got to let ladies first. So
okay, no, I was just going to say that they are more vocal now that even at my age, I'm 43. I always forget how old I am. Don't ask me.
Me too.
It's like the older I get, I forget how old I am. Yeah. But even in my age, my generation, we were not as vocal as the generation is now. They'll let you know, I don't like this. This is making me uncomfortable. They'll change the narrative opposed to whatever the narrative was before. We just went with it. Which is good now, because they're able to express themselves more. They're not afraid. Some things we may think is not good because they should be afraid of not to express themselves as much, because it may come off of being disrespectful. In some ways it is disrespectful, is, you know, your presentation of it could be improved, but I think it's a strength that they have that we were lacking before.
Yeah. And I think it's like when you start looking at generations, you're always seeing how things kind of morph and adjust, and things, the next generation is doing something the other generation thought was taboo or thought was unacceptable. I think the thing I'd hope to see moving forward, I know it's hard, is kind of have those people who are gap fillers, who kind of bridge the gap, because there's a beauty, and like Q said, there's a beauty in what the younger generation is bringing. They're saying, hey, I don't have to settle for this. I can do more. But on the other hand, there's this aspect where a certain level, and I know I'm saying a stereotype because I know this is not all people, there's some type of generational difference in regards to work ethic and what it means to say, hey, even if you don't feel like it, you still do the work, or you complete your time. You don't just say, hey, I'm not showing up to work today because I'm done with this job and I'm over. You know, and I think there's some things on both sides where they can learn from each other.
Yeah.
But it is beautiful to see them actually saying, hey, the times where I worked a job that I hated, that was both being emotionally, spiritually, and physically draining and deteriorating my body, I don't have to do that and then basically live 60 years of my life hating what I do. They're like, no, like God's given me a life. I want to live it.
Yeah.
I don't have to keep doing what I hate in order to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming from the right place, but like you said, Q, the presentation sometimes is immature. Yeah. What we've seen in the headlines recently is an uptick in suicides, namely young Black men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, that group is so embattled all the time, and it's disappointing. What is not getting to them, that because we're the generation really that should be surrounding them, leading them. Where is the disconnect?
Well, if you don't mind, Q, can I jump in?
Yes, please do so.
I have a heart and passion for men. So I lost my father last year in March. And so me and my dad, I didn't grow up with him in my house. My parents divorced when I was 2. And so I know the struggle of going through that plight of not trying to find yourself as a man and not knowing things and not necessarily having someone there to teach you directly. And a lot of young men are hurting and in need of help, but they just don't know how to get it. And what has been set up as a stigma is that as an African male, it happens with all male, but I'm going to speak to our community as Black men. There's this idea where I can't be vulnerable, because if I'm vulnerable, that shows weakness, and if I'm vulnerable, somebody will take advantage of that. They will take it full advantage of that, and then I'm going to be hurt more. And these young men are running into situations where they just have no one to talk to. And so my generation, it's important for us to step in. And when you look at the field of mental health and counseling, so I was a pastor prior to this. And in pastoral ministry, I recognized that although I had a natural gifting towards caring for people, I said I needed some actual vocational training in this, and which is why I'm in school finishing up. And so there's this element where you just have to have the heart for it. But then once you have the heart for it, you have to go out there and do it, because there are not a lot of us. When I tried to get a counselor in the beautiful, colorful city of Chicago, you know how hard it is to find a Black counselor who's a male? And I love my ladies. I think women are more than proficient to be able to counsel me. But there are times where you're like, I just want to talk to a brother. Like, I want to be able to talk to him. And it's just hard to find. And so there are a crop of us coming into the field. There are a crop who have already been in the field who are pushing it. And we're really trying to reach our arms out to just touch guys, because they're hurting and nobody's just coming to put their arms around them.
Yeah, I agree with Ashanti. It is a lack of male clinicians in our community. One, I don't know, and this is just my theory, that being a counselor or a therapist is more, when you want to talk to somebody, you talk to a female, because like you said, with men, it's a stigma of showing weakness, which is not. You said you were a pastor, and I tell pastors a lot. You deal with a lot. You deal with your congregation, you deal with your personal family, you deal with the community, and having someone to talk to, aside from praying, is aside from your family, you should have a therapist to talk to, because you have to have an outlet as well. I think with our African American men, they have, a lot of them have grown up in single family homes, and they may have had to grow up and be the man of the house, because they do have that missing male figure in the home. So that has a lot on their shoulders, and it makes them feel like that they'll be vulnerable if they show some type of emotional weakness, or feel like they need to talk to someone because they may be feeling depressed or overwhelmed or something.
Francesca, I want to piggyback off of something you just kind of touched upon, which is male-female relationships within a home, and people not there, and abuse, emotional, physical, sexual, whatever's going on in someone's household. There is a lot of contention right now, mostly social media based, which is where the conversations are these days. That's the town hall, really. There's a lot of contention between Black men and women. Some of it's long standing. Some of it seems to be kind of shock based for likes and comments and shares. But I'm seeing it seep really deeply into mindsets and the way we interact with each other, really in a pretty short period of time. It seems to have just taken a hard turn. How do we repair that, and what is that coming from?
I think social media has just taken over drastically. Some people put so much on social media. A lot of people think that social media is real life. So what they don't understand is because someone posted doesn't mean that that's really what's going on in their lives. And then on the other hand, it's good that some people do post things because you can see that they may be seeking help or calling out for help. I think you just have to just know exactly, not so much who the person is. Well, you do need to know who the person is, but learn how to reach out outside of social media, off of social media, because when you write something and you post something, it depends on how the person receives it. I can say something real general, and one person can take it a different way, and then the next person would say, "Oh my God, she looked like I think something is going on with her. Somebody, somebody go check up on her." But it can just be something eye-opening that could help somebody else. So it just depends on how someone takes the message in. That's just my point of view.
Yeah. Ashanti, there's people kind of positioning themselves as experts, and I guess I could get on here and say I'm a air jet fighter pilot, and you have no reason to believe anything but what I've said. Mind you, I can't walk down the stairs without tripping, so no one is going to allow me to fly a plane. But only I know that. If I'm giving advice on flight training, you may believe that I know what I'm talking about. There's a lot floating around, some of it negative, some of it controversial. What we all can agree upon, I think, though, is that Black men are looking for a voice and a way to present their issues and concerns. How do men, and then women specifically, and I'll have you answer that, and then Q, you jump in too on that. How can we give men the space and the ears that they need to communicate those issues in a healthy way?
Q, I thought she gave you a hard question. I'm glad she gave it to her. Now she's throwing one at me. So it's a layered question, but a great question. Is that so? I'll try and be concise to break this down into sections. So I think one is that it's kind of touching on your last question. We cannot dismiss the impact of the oversexualization, particularly of our women, and how that has deteriorated the relationship between men and women. Because when they're seen as a byproduct of my sexual desire and all my fantasies, and that's it, versus as a gift from God to be cherished and valued and nurtured and developed and made into something more, that is problematic. And a woman is not going to then on her end nourish, cherish, and help make the man into what he needs to be when she's not valued, but is just treated as a piece of, like I said, my sexual desire and fantasy. There's an interesting, I don't like plug artists, but Kendrick Lamar just recently dropped a project, and he has a song on there that was very hard for me to listen to but it was like, it was talking about the dysfunction between a male and female, and they're going back and forth with each other, basically cussing each other out in a rap song. But it was like, oh, well, that's what I hear over here in Brownsville when I'm dealing with a neighbor 4 doors down, or when I'm walking down the block and I'm talking to some other people and I'm hearing a couple argue. It's like, this is what's happening. And so the lack of value makes it hard to even give people the space then to even be able to hear what the other person has to say. So I would think one of the suggestions, like you say, well, what do women do? I say for women, recognize you can't fix a man, nor is it your responsibility. If you are in a relationship with a man who is dysfunctional, I'm not saying that you cut him off outright, but you got to ask yourself, is this worth me staying invested in for my own personal well-being? Because like, if this is hurting me in a way that's destroying me interiorly and externally, I can't stay around that, but nor can I fix it. But also you have to create space for, if it is a worthwhile relationship where you're saying, hey, I'm invested, not perfect, but I know I've just got to give him opportunity to grow. You've got to give him really the space and opportunity to grow. So that means that when he says something in a vulnerable space, you really have to be in an intuitive space to say, okay, he's being vulnerable right now, and I can't afford to jump.
Mm-hmm.
Because what will happen with men is, if we're vulnerable and you jump or like scratch us, we're done. We'll try once. It's going to be hard for us to try twice. And then we just go deeper into the hole. And on the other end, for men, it's saying, hey, listen, I've got to take away the pride, the bravado of saying, hey, I got this, I can handle it. There's so many little trigger things that we're taught as young adults and kids. It's like, hey, I've got to maintain. Well, what does that mean? You can't maintain on your own. It's this idea that somehow I can hold myself together, or you got to man up.
Mm-hmm.
So that basically says I can't ask for help. So when
Mm-hmm.
all these things combine, it just leads to an internal self-destructive attitude, because what's really hurting us as men, which leads to us abusing or misusing women, is our own self-hate of ourselves. We do it to our sons when we hate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We start being extra judgment on them. I saw a mom and a father literally cuss out their kid, call him a punk, a sissy, and a B, because he dropped his book bag and was crying because they were telling him to move fast. And I'm like, do you understand what you're doing to that young man's psyche? That 4 to 5 year old boy, when he turns 15, he's going to be the one who's out here trying to rob you.
Mm-hmm.
People say, well, oh, that's too much. I'm like, no, because it's like, you've been mistreated so hard, you don't value yourself. Then you're going to say, hey, I'm going to go because I don't value humanity, because I'm not valued. And so I think on both sides, giving space for the person to be vulnerable and not jumping on them is key. But if you're not taking those steps to do self-care and get help from others, I don't want to be disheartening, but it really is. It's almost impossible. Like, you've got to get help. It's just, it's not even a question of, well, should I? You have to find a way to get help.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Ashanti. I often tell couples when we're doing couples counseling, when someone has been hurt in previous relationships, you don't heal from it, you bring that into new relationships. You may think that you may be over it because you're no longer with that person, but that hurt is still there because it has never been addressed. And it's going to come up in the new relationship. Couples, I think it's good for couples to have counseling together as well as individually, because sometimes, and I found that during the couples counseling, they bring up issues that may have happened to them in their childhood. Like you said, the young man that was, or the child that was being scorned by their parents because he dropped his book bag. Well, like you said, at 15, he still has that in his head. At 30, he's still going to have that in his head, because if I do something, I got to man up. I can't cry. If I drop something, I mess up. I can't cry because at 5 years old, my mom and my daddy, they cursed at me because I dropped my book bag. Now I'm 30 years old. I don't know how to handle emotions or handle things that's happening in my relationship or that surround me properly because I got cursed out for dropping a book bag at the age of 5. So, and those things come up during couples counseling because those things have never been addressed, because they have all of those emotions that they don't know how to handle. So individual and family or counseling, couples counseling is always good.
To that point, the city has already seen, I don't know, I won't call it record violence. I know that one of those days last week was a record, 21 shootings. And we're not even officially into summer yet. It's obvious these young men and women, there's a surprising increasing amount of young women involved in the violence, or, and that might just be gender bias, but I'm always surprised to see the number of young women that are involved.
Yeah.
Are we beyond repair?
That's a hard one, because it seems like we think that it's dying down, and then soon as the weather starts breaking, it increases. I don't think that we're beyond repair. I think that we have lost respect for ourselves, in some ways. And that's because I know growing up, we had neighbors that were able to, if our parents weren't around, they were, stepping in if they saw you doing something wrong, and your parents were okay with it, and they'd get you too once after the neighbor got you. Now it's the complete opposite. Parents do not want anyone else saying anything to their child. Parents are being more of a friend than a parent to their child. They're smoking and drinking with their teenagers instead of teaching them more ways of how to respect themselves as a person and be a respectful citizen, because they do have to grow up and be citizens. So I think that the lack of respect that we have now for ourselves in our community is an issue now. We, just riding around, and I don't live in Illinois. I do live in Indiana. So a lot of Illinois people are moving to Indiana more now, and you can tell the difference, unfortunately, when individuals, even when we have counseling services and you can automatically tell who's from Indiana and who's from Illinois before they even give you a history, just by their demeanor. They're more, now the females are more aggressive now than the men to me. Even as teenagers, they are way more aggressive. They're more apt to start a fight.
What is that?
They have a lot of anger, and I don't know where this anger is coming from, but these young children are very angry. And I don't really know exactly what's going on that started the anger, that's triggering the anger. It could be what they see on TV. I think we talked about social media before. I think social media has a lot to do with it. They have a lot of social bullying goes on, which starts a lot of anger. Bullying within the school, that starts a lot of anger. Everyone is in competition with each other. They're trying to show one person up from another person, which is a horrible thing as well. Like the bullying is like out of control right now. It seems like kids are younger and younger, as elementary school, getting bullied. What does a kindergartner know about bullying another kindergartner? These are learned behaviors that you see in the home. A lot of things are happening in the home that we don't see. So even though they don't want to talk about it, their behavior is showing it.
You said, is it beyond saving? I'd say no, it's not beyond. I think we just have to set realistic parameters of recognizing that this is going to take time. And when we say take time, I'm not talking about 5 years. I'm talking about maybe
generational.
20, 50.
Generational, yeah.
I mean, it took generational stuff to get to where we are. So it's in the same way going to take, and it's not a one-stop shop. It's hard to have good mental health when you're living in poverty. I don't know anybody who, if you've not been broke, if you've not experienced like having to get Link or food stamps, like that, like it's hard to make right decisions and be happy when you're poor. Now, is it possible? Yes, but like some of the things that just weigh on you, the stress, it makes it very difficult. And so I think it's a layered effect. But one thing I always tell people, because people say, well, Ashanti, why don't they just change? Why don't they just do something different and make better decisions? And I always remind them, I was like, well, it's easy to say that when we've been exposed to different.
Right.
No one actually lives out something different than what they've been exposed to. And the only time they live out something different than what they've been exposed to in their background is if somebody exposes them to something new. So one of the passions I have with my nonprofit, A Clear View, is really saying, hey, what can we do as we come into communities and do wellness events centered around healthy relationship skills, how to parent out of love instead of anger, to actually be able to say, hey, here's some practical tips and tools of saying, hey, here's something I can take home and use. Not a theory, not something that's I saw on Dr. Phil, not a Dr. Phil hater, but it's just like something I can actually see myself and say, oh, here's somebody who looks like me, who can relate to me, and they're showing me a different way. Like there are other options. Like people ask me, like, Dad, how did you become the father you are? I was like, it took work. So although I didn't grow up with my dad in the house, I learned to be a good father. And I'm working steadily at it, but it's because I sit and learn from other fathers. I'm sitting at old guys who I talk to. I'm asking questions of younger guys who've been fathers longer than me. I don't let age be a problem, and really working to get help. And I think that's key. And you mentioned like young ladies being angry. I think again, when women aren't protected, you turn into self-defense mode. When women get in self-defense mode, I'll say especially African-American women, like our sister, when y'all get in a corner and it's like, okay, I'm in self-defense mode, you're like, I'm going to get out by any means necessary.
Yeah.
So imagine if you're living at that level of tension every day. And you've been living at that tension every day since you may be 7 to 8 years old. When you're 13, 14, it's really hard. And I'll give a quick story of just some of the simple example of the other things that play a role as well. We were at the movie theater, me and my wife, and this young lady in the group of kids, it was probably about 4 or 5 of them, African-American, they got kicked out. And one young lady in particular started cussing, just kind of going wild, belligerent. And me and my wife were like, okay, we got to say something. So we stepped over, pulled her and her other friends to the side and like, hey, listen, what's going on? And my wife was able to say some more because she was like, listen, you represent us, sister. We can't be out here looking crazy. And as a young lady, she was able to hear from her. But again, we came with a gentle spirit, not like, what y'all doing? It was like, hey, come on. Look. They could tell we wanted to help them. And so then I started to talk to them, and we started to share and hear what their story was. Her brother had just been killed 4 months ago. Her cousin, who was like another big brother to her, had been killed in Chicago a year before that. She had never received any counseling. Her family, they don't talk about it. They cried, but that's it. And so when you've got all that emotion, that pain, that hardship, they have no idea what to do with it. And typically, when you're going to do something with it, it's going to be something negative.
Right.
And I think as adults, what I'm learning is we have to, I know it seems very hard to do, we actually have to recognize that many young adults don't know any better. The reason why poor decision making lasts so long is because your prefrontal cortex and Q, you know this, isn't fully developed until you're about 26. And so that's the judgment center of your brain. So I have to think like, oh, this is why they're doing stuff that makes absolutely no sense, because there's actually some biological aspects to it where it hasn't been developed. But imagine not being developed along with the trauma that is behind it as well. And so I say this, it's doable. We just got to work together to keep plowing it until it's done.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you all a question about the way we are creating problems for ourselves as a Black community. Q, to your point about, the young woman having so much anger and they're kind of presenting their issues that way. Are we doing each other a disservice with the language that we use with each other? If we're constantly calling, oh, she's a bad bee, or that's my nigga, are we doing each other a disservice? I know if the culture would present it as support and building each other up, and that's just the way we talk to each other. We've changed the meanings of those words. You only are what you answer to. All of the things we all tell each other. But those words do have definitions. They do have meaning, and we know the meaning. Back here somewhere, what the intention of those words are. Do we do each other a disservice by, feeding that into our ears and our spirits through music, through videos, through movies? I just know there's, whether the folks that are watching are faith, belong to a particular faith community or not, words have consequences. Words have power. And so are we harming each other with the words that we use?
I have used those words, like my friends and I, we talk to each other, a certain kind of way. it's understandable, it's how we, you understand each other. And these friends are, I've been friends with my best friend since I was 5 years old. We've never had an argument. We don't talk every day, but, we just have an understanding that our communication. But on the other hand, if someone outside of my friend zone says something to me, can say the same thing to me that my best friend said to me, it's going to be different, right? It's a huge problem. It's like, what you say? Okay, hold on now. It's a huge problem. Music has a huge impact. It's a universal language, so it has a huge impact in anybody's culture, whether it's African American, Caucasian, Asian, Hispanic culture. It has a huge impact. Music does. So music can speak to us in different ways, especially of how women are presented in some music lyrics. It's very disrespectful.
We're singing a lot of those songs.
And that's what I was going to say. We're singing it ourselves, because it's like we're giving them permission to say you a bad bee, and are telling us a man saying it. Some females feel like if a man said that I'm a bad bee, then that's something. To me, I don't want another man. I don't want a man calling me a bee, because I'm going to take it in a defensive way. Yes, I know I'm a bad bee, but don't you call me a bee. It's how that if someone however someone addresses. Like I said before, the respect of how we have for ourselves. If you carry yourself a certain way and you give a person permission of how they're going to treat you. You show a person how to treat you. You show a person how to talk to you, by how you represent yourself. If you represent yourself in a manner to where someone is going to call you out of your name or call you a bad word, then that person is going to treat you that way. If you show yourself with respect, you show that you're proud of yourself, you're proud of who you are, they're going to treat you as such, and they're going to present themselves to you as such. So it's just the way of a presentation of how everything should be.
Pastor
is don't call me you a pastor. Okay, I'm gonna be very vulnerable right now. I think it's probably one of the. I think as an adult, it's probably one of the most hypocritical areas of my life, because there is this element where there are things that I digest that I know aren't necessarily good, but I feel like I'm old enough to process it, so that's okay. But I wouldn't let my children hear it, and I wouldn't even want my teenagers hearing it or watching it, because I know it shapes their psyche, it shapes how they see things. So I remember growing up, like I didn't smoke weed until I was probably 19, but I know that music played a huge role in the process because it looked cool to me, like seeing them. And so even when I tried it, I was like, oh, I was trying to mimic the people I listened to. I was a huge R&B kid. When I grew up, I was like, rap was big, but I was an R&B guy. So imagine like 11, 12-year-old boy who's listening to not only R. Kelly, but also listening to Ronald Isley, Between the Sheets, not knowing what Between the Sheets even is, but like, oh, this is the jam. Listening to Teddy Pendergrass, Barry White, all these things. But I, as I've gotten older, I recognize that, hey, you know what? These things are actually shaping how I see women and how I value or how I prioritize a relationship and what I'm desiring, even if it's just a little bit. One thing that I say, like as the opposite though, with positive, like my former pastor back in Atlanta, where I got saved at the church, I remember we had this men's ministry called Just Brothers. And one of the things that we've done to this day, so that I joined there and got saved when I was 19. And so I'm 43 now. So we're over 23, 24 years. We greet each other with King. So we say, hey, what's up, King? And then we have different names, like nicknames for each other. Like my nickname is $100, but it's nothing negative. So it's like all of our stuff is like positive. But we always, most of the time in our text message, yo, King, what's up? That's how we communicate. And one of the other things we always do is too, believe it or not, I have 13 to 14 men who every time we get off the phone with each other, we say, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Those things change us.
Yeah. That's
hearing
huge.
those words regularly of King on those days where I don't feel like one, when I don't feel like crap, when I feel like Ashanti's trash, when I feel like Ashanti's not living up to the standard, when I feel like Ashanti can't even live up to the potential, and I hear my boy say, hey, King, you've got this and we've got you, it does something. When he says, they say, hey, you know we love you and we're going to support you, it does something. And so that's why I say there's the irony, because if those positive words are doing something, then I almost think I'm lying to myself if I don't believe the song where I just heard that I was jamming to. Although it's like, I would never say this to a woman, or I'd never shoot a guy up. You know what I'm saying? I ain't shooting nobody. But I can't. It's like, is it really realistic of me to say that somehow those words aren't impacting me somehow? Even if it's on a microscopic level where it's just like it keeps me at a certain level of anger. Like, think about it. There's certain songs you play in order to go play a sporting game.
Yeah.
And what it is, you cut that song on in order to get you a certain mood. You hear these certain words to get you in a certain space. Even, I know there's some people out here who still cuss, and I try and keep mine to. But like, even
the necessity.
Yeah, you even a certain way in order to communicate something to actually impact somebody.
How you want to say it, right? Because the way you communicate it, it gives you the intensity of it.
Yeah.
It tells you how important it is.
And so all those things impact. I mean, you've all seen the stories where they do like the test where they'll have a plant, and they'll have one plant on one side, one plant on the other, and they'll tell the people to walk by this plant and just keep saying negative things to the plant, and somehow the plant dies. So it's like there's a significance of words, and I think we can't. That's why I said that's a certain level of hypocrisy, because like we know like there's an impact, and we're like, well, we got an exception here, and I think that's the tension we run into.
Yeah. And I think that's just because of how we are in our community. Like, it's okay if we call each other the N word, but someone outside our community calling us the N, we ready to fight. We are. Well, I'm ready to fight.
I'm laughing.
I'm not a fighter.
Somebody said cursing is good for the soul. That's why I just laughed.
All right, yeah, me too.
Mark, I should have known it was him.
So can I get it? I'm gonna get in trouble when I say this, but I'd be curious. Q, would you be willing to do a test?
What kind of test?
Like we'll say an experiment.
Okay.
Like you and your girls do the challenge of saying, instead of the B word, we're gonna call each other queens for the next 2 months.
Oh, but we don't do it all the time. It's just if we're like talking about something, and we're like, let me tell you what happened. But it's not like
you saying, hey B, come on.
It's not like that. It's not like that, because we do encourage each other. Like, I have a friend, she went through a divorce a couple of years ago. And I never talked to her about it. I never, wanted to get so deep into it. I just opened up my home to her and her child. Like, you guys need to come at any time. You're more than welcome. And she told me a couple of weeks ago, she was almost in tears, and had me almost in tears, with saying that she never told me, and I probably never knew of how much my presence and her ability to just come and not even have to talk about what she was going through, but just being there with me helped her. So we don't always say, hey, you be. It's just being a friend. Or just having someone that you can you don't even have to address what's going on at the time, but just being there with someone and giving them the opportunity, if need be, to be able to just express what's going on. It's always good. Not to always have to use,
And that's a prime example of communication. So I want to apologize, Q, because I misunderstood what you was communicating.
Yeah.
I thought I was running around hollering, and I was like, because I know girls who do that. So I was like, hey.
Yeah. No.
Women who do that.
Yeah, I'm not
My
like that. We're
apologies.
not
I'm
like
sorry.
that at all. Not a
Yeah.
problem. No, we're not like that at all. It's just, I got hood friends and I got friends that's not so hood.
And when in Rome, huh?
And and that's what it is. But and in the scope of things, I'm a true church girl.
To that point, that's one of the particular, and I guess it can be seen as a pro and as as a benefit to our personalities and the way we can move around in the world, and also a burden is that we can become so many different shapes depending on what
a chameleon.
Yeah, is that good or bad?
It's a chameleon. I call myself a chameleon all the time. I feel like I fit in. I whatever setting I'm in, I try to change to, not so much to fit in, but to not make it seem like, because some people, when they see me, they don't really know how to perceive me. I don't know, because sometimes we have a look on our face. But for me, because I'm really not a talker, even though I talk for a living, I'm not a talker at all. I'm not an open person. But I'm an introvert that knows how to be an extrovert. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
I know how to be friendly when I need to be. I know how to, even though I'm being friendly to you, I am looking around my area. I'm scoping everything out. I'm being very observant, and knowing how to address others. I take people for how they present themselves to me. I know when someone's being friendly with me, and I know when someone that's being genuine with me, and I know when someone is not being genuine with me. So I'm going to address you in that way. So being a chameleon, when I say I call myself a chameleon, I mean, I'm able to just maneuver and fit in any situation I'm in. If I'm with the mayor of the city or the governor of the state, or I'm with my girls that we just hanging out, I know how to present myself in that moment.
I think both are necessary. There is this aspect where you do have to be prepared to adjust in different situations. Some of it's just natural. Like, again, like she mentioned, like when she's with her girls, or even with her family, you're going to be a certain way. It's just because it's family. You know them. There's certain things you can get by with because they already understand and know who I am, so I don't have to try and explain it to them. Whereas in other situations, you have to be able to adjust, and I think sometimes people don't know how to do that well. But in a complete honesty, it's also on the other side of it. The negative side is quite taxing. Because I know how to code switch, and so that. The skill is great to have, but having to do it, and excuse my language, I'm gonna say, just really wears you the hell out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes from, like you mentioned before, about being exposed to certain situations. Some people don't know how because they've never been exposed. They've lived in only one certain way of only one thing. They don't know how to think outside of what they're used to, outside of their box. They don't know that it's a circle outside of that box that they may be able to go to. So exposure is a thing. I've been exposed to a lot of different environments. So that's how I was able to learn. It's a learned behavior to be able to, switch up when need be. It can be exhausting sometimes. It can be.
And I think Q, because we're the same age, I think we were trained that way intentionally.
Yeah.
Because they were like, listen, our parents were like, listen, you're African American. This is not your world.
Yeah.
Like, you live in a white society, so you better know how to adjust.
Yeah.
And know what language to use in what place and what language not to. And imagine my name is Ashanti. So I'm older than the singer, but like when they see my name, Ashanti, they're like, okay, this is not. If I had Jeff, even Ramon, you know what I'm saying?
Ashanti is black.
Yeah, it's like, okay. So it's like there's certain presuppositions people have with that. So I knew, okay, I've got to come into this place presenting myself in a certain way. I already know the quality of person I am, but if I come in using slang, I know that does a certain thing.
Yeah.
I'll give you a prime example. I got a ticket in Atlanta. I was growing my hair out because I was getting my cornrows in. Do you know I was headed to go to court, and I was like,
Right.
yeah, I'm cutting my hair off.
Yeah.
Now, some people say that's extreme. Maybe it was, but in that moment, I was like, I recognize that going in there, even though I knew I was a student at Morehouse, you know what I'm saying? So I had everything to say, oh, it's a good brother. But I was like, just the thought of them seeing me growing my hair out might present a certain way.
Yep.
Again, that's one of the tensions that I think we spoke to earlier of like our younger generation now. They're like, we're not having that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be me. But I think we were just taught that. And so that's what I mean. Like that stuff where I'm having to learn how to unlearn elements of it, because there's a part that I need to keep, but there's also a part that's like, hey, I've taken this to an extreme. There really isn't anybody's fault. So it's not my parents' fault. It's really just on me and how I've let it morph.
Yeah.
And that's something we all have to wrestle with, I think.
All right, I'm going to bring in I've enjoyed our time together.
Yeah.
And I know
Me as well.
the folks want to join us too. I'm going to bring in the rest of the Next Showcase Chat and Chill family. Hi. Hello. So, gentlemen, this is a safe space. Do you have anything you need to talk to the counselors about?
Oh, Father, let's help us.
Mark is about to
might go first.
Give me permission to cuss, but I know y'all really don't need it. But I really don't. And my choir tell you, I really don't need it. But I have a question for you guys though, because as you guys know, Next Showcase USA, we are for the most part an artist-based organization where we cater to musicians and creative arts individuals. So in the society that we're living in now, we understand that mental health issues are really, really high among the artists. There are a lot of artists that, we was in the pandemic, because this was our livelihood. This is our livelihood. So when we was in the pandemic, and we still basically still in it to a certain degree, because now we're dealing with pandemic and inflation. But what would be your advice to tell the artists how to cope with that? Because again, like we lost our income, and a lot of people's like, y'all should be able to go out and write songs or write books and stuff like that. I'm not in a book writing or songwriting mode. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to deal with COVID, how I'm going to live to my next meal, get my next meal, what case may be. Because we had artists that were doing dates and getting $10,000 for a date for one date. Now we're depending on $400 and some odd for unemployment. That's a difference when your income is different, but your bills and your overhead don't change. That didn't change,
or have increased,
or have increased. So what's the message, and how do we tell our young people? Because suicide is really heavy within our young people, as well as our old people. It's really very common now within the 20-year-olds and the millennials and what's a J something? They just young people to me. I don't understand that language. They just younger than 20 and 19, whatever that language is. But what's the advice to them though? How do they cope with that? Because it's real now.
You want to go ahead?
Also, we're cussing as well. I understand we're gonna cuss, but outside of that part, somebody take it.
You want to go ahead, Ashanti?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think one of the things we mentioned earlier is them seeking help just to talk. I think with artists, one of the beautiful gifts that artists have is that they can create something out of nothing and communicate things in such a way that can actually transform people's lives. On the tail end, the back end of that, though, is who are you speaking to help you reshape some of your life experiences? And so being able to actually have somebody to talk to help you process, because I think not being able to express your art, not being able to then have the finances to sustain the art I think people get scared of the word, but it is traumatizing. So you got COVID that's traumatizing. You have the adjustment to COVID that's traumatizing. You have the racial tension that was already existing prior to COVID that's traumatizing. And now your artwork is no longer able to be kind of moved like it once was, or you're not able to get to that space where you're able to be somewhere to express yourself. And so it can become very insular, where you're just looking inside yourself all the time. And even if you're writing, it can be healthy. It still cannot necessarily give you that perspective. And so clinical language, Q, you know, they would say it's reframing. So it's like there's nobody to say, hey, I hear what you're saying, but hey, here's a different look at what it could potentially be. That'll be very helpful. Now, from a very practical standpoint, I'm not sure how to tell you how to get more money. But from a mental health perspective, really having that voice to have somebody talk to reframe what you're thinking, because I know it can sound like what you are saying is true, and it feels true and feels very real. It isn't necessarily as true as you think, and having somebody give a different perspective can be what really helps you turn that corner and keep you moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ashanti. I think some artists, they use their art and their music to express themselves. And now during the pandemic, they didn't have that opportunity. So like you said, having someone to go and speak to, and in that moment, with talking to a counselor or therapist, showing them other ways of how they could express themselves outside of being able to, through music or through art or whatever, however way they express themselves is a great way. Like you said, the money thing is not, we can't tell you how to go out and make your money again. But learning different ways of how you can learn how to express your art is always a good thing.
And I'll throw this out there. There are actually career counselors.
Yeah.
So there are people who work with people, particularly as they're wrestling with their career from a counseling perspective, that focuses on the workplace as well.
Yeah.
Well, I got one more thing for me, and then I turn it over to Reggie Tyra. So, Ashanti, I heard you say earlier that you were a former pastor, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, in the church and in the church world, it is frowned upon by a lot of pastors and ministers to seek counseling. Or they say only thing you need to do is pray, and God's going to work it out, and this, that, and the other. And again, go ahead, Reg. I'm sorry.
Turn it over to God. God can work it out. God can have it.
And it's one thing I love about my pastor, because he advocates both God and therapy. Because a lot of pastors won't be true to say they were needing a lot of therapy and was getting therapy, but telling other members, you don't need, nothing you do is just pray. But they were actually behind closed doors getting the therapy that they need. What is the message that we can send? And this is just in our church world. What is the message that we need to send to our people, young, old, whatever case may be, that it's okay? Because it is. It's okay to pray, but it's also okay to seek professional help.
The Bible says to seek good counsel.
It does.
Yeah.
It's in the book.
Well, oftentimes when they say that, people take that and say that only means your friends or some type of fellow leadership. Your pastor. Well, first I would say this. I want to say to pastors in the position, I would say, let go of the lie. It's really I'd say an issue of the heart, and you really having to repent, because that God's not in that. There is a need for help, because as we mentioned earlier, there's some things that aren't just so for example, I'm pausing because I'm hesitant to say it, but so me and God have had beef because of a miscarriage we experienced. Me and God have had beef, and so me just praying was not enough to get me through that process, because I was talking to my Creator, who I love, and I know He is my King, but I was mad at Him because He hadn't moved in the way that I wanted Him to move and preserve something that I really wanted Him to preserve. And so really I had to get help through counseling and talking to help navigate that. And there are a lot of things that we need to be able to talk out. Now, you do this in conjunction with Scripture. I know pastors, a good pastor friend of mine, Pastor Charles Butler, who he has actually worked with the counselors, because sometimes you have counselors who aren't even Christians, but he's worked with the counselor to help care for their congregant. So they had him as a client, and he was their pastor, and he said, hey, I'm going to help work in conjunction with your counselor to help care for you. And it's this beautiful union of being able to say, hey, you need both. And then I will say it, sometimes you need medication. There are times where there is actually something chemical going on
chemical imbalance.
You're imbalanced and you need assistance.
Yeah, and it's okay.
You're not going to get that just in praying. Now, can God change your physical structure internally? Yes. Is that going to happen all the time? No. Because you still go over the counter when you got the flu.
Yeah.
And so I want everyone who's listening to say, listen, you can go get counseling. Go get counseling. And I'm saying, I'm about to get in trouble. I really would say your pastor shouldn't be the first place unless they've been trained.
Yeah. I think pastors should also, if they present it to the congregation, and they tell them it's okay to seek counseling, because some of them, they don't present it to the congregation. Our pastor, he has, he enforces, going to, talk to a counselor. I mean, he got a counselor in his congregation, but he's done, he's had it through, we have Vacation Bible School. He's devoted some sessions in one of our Vacation Bible schools that's geared towards mental health. So I think if pastors present it to their congregation and have a professional there along with him to speak with the congregation so they can see it's okay. Yeah, you can still talk to me, but this person here has more of, like you said, an educational background that'll be able to address whatever the issues are. So some issues that some people address, sometimes it's overwhelming for me. So I know it can be overwhelming for a pastor. And I've been doing this for like 20 years.
I want to clarify something just because I know we're in this day and age where things are chopped up and somebody going to hurry with this and be like, "Ooh, he said this." What I want to say is this for clarity is, yes, you should speak to your pastor at some touch point. But what I'm saying is that he's not your all in all when it comes to counseling. Mm-hmm. You share, like, if you're going through a hardship, I talk to my pastor, but I also know, like, hey, I'm going to go get a counselor as well.
Yeah.
And then for pastors, I think we have to remember is this understanding that unless we've been trained, and this is what I learned, is that typically as pastors, we actually think we have to fix it. Mm-hmm. So typically what happens is our congregant comes to us, they share, and we're like, okay, we got to help fix it, or we've got to come provide an answer for them. But what happens is when you get trained in counseling, you learn that the person you're talking to is the expert, and you're helping them. And so even as pastors, learning how to say, hey, it's not my responsibility to fix you, but it's my responsibility to come alongside you to help you through this process, not fix it for you and solve it all. And because there are a lot of pastors who are stressed out for that, there are a lot of pastors, quite frankly, over the last 3 to 4 years who have actually committed suicide.
Yes.
They've had thriving ministries.
Yeah.
They've committed suicide because internally they're
holding all that in.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's one reason why I do not counsel people that I know. Because I hold it in because I know them personally, and that it weighs a lot on me. Because they're coming to me with all the issues and stuff that no one know, and they're trusting me with all of this. So I would never counsel anyone I know because, like you said, pastors, they hold everything in, and that's why I expressed earlier in our conversation that it's good for pastors to have their own therapists as well. To release all of that they had in them from their own congregation or their own personal lives.
Reggie?
Great conversation. A lot of different points that have been touched upon. One thing that I learned pretty early on, I'm a little older than you guys, but we are in that same age group where we did have to code switch. Code switch is a real thing for African Americans. I don't know about other cultures, but I know me personally worked in corporate America. I did the locks thing and had to get permission from my boss to for it to be okay to have the locks in the workspace. And then, going and getting to a point where I needed to apply for another job and saying, maybe I should cut these off so that I can get the position that I'm looking for. So there are a lot of things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis in life in general. And it's okay not to be okay. And it's definitely okay to get help when it's not okay. So the conversation that we've had today, definitely want everyone to take away. Again, it's okay not to be okay. Things happen. Life happens. Um, tragedies happen, and we all need someone to talk to. And as stated, being a man of, I'm an assistant pastor, so hey, yeah, we need somebody to talk to too. And we it's good when we have someone that looks like us to talk to. Ashanti, Q, thank you guys for joining us today. Tyra, as always, great conversation.
Thank you.
It's okay not to be okay. Let's get help.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it's good. And we're gonna turn it back over to Tyra. But before we leave, you guys, super excited that again on next month, Chat and Chill, the exclusive will not only just be on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, but we'll be on radio as well. So you guys be able to catch her every third Saturday in the month at National Case USA radio station. All right. So we tell you guys a little bit more about that. Congratulations to you, Tyra. Thank you guys so much for being a part. We turn it back over to you, Tyra. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Before we leave, I want to give Q and Ashanti a chance to let folks know where to find them.
Okay, you can reach Bright Path Support Services. We are located in Maryville, Indiana. You can go to our Facebook page, Bright Path Support Services, or you can contact us by phone at 219-796-0518 or on our website at brightpathss.com.
Big ups to my sister Q. I'm still establishing myself, but the best way to reach me will actually be via email. It's fairly long, but I think you guys can rock with it. It is Ashanti. That's ASHANTI Pettaway, PETTAWAY at gmail.com. And of course, you can find me on social media, Facebook as well there. And you can inbox me if you have any questions as I continue to grow and develop. I'm excited about as we branch out with Clearview. I want to celebrate the fact we just got our 501c3 status confirmed. Q, you may know how hard that is getting stuff done.
Yes.
Especially during COVID. So it took almost a year, but that's a recent development. So we're excited about that. And Tyra, thank you for this time. And I look forward to doing it. Thanks to the rest of the guys as well.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for having us.
It was a great conversation. Thank you. We'll talk to you too soon.
Yes.
So if you've learned nothing else in this last hour, I hope you've learned that your voice and your concerns and your experience matters. And if you need help juggling all of those things, there's help available. And that's to everyone, to folks within the church community, to folks within the Black community who maybe have learned to keep, don't put your dirty laundry outside. You got to wash the laundry because it's still dirty, right? Thank you for joining us for this hour. Have a great and safe weekend, and we'll see you again soon.